Yeah, today we have another very quite interesting speaker from Australia. He's joining with us. We are having Dr. John James, and he is the Enablers of Change. He holds the NGO Enablers of Change. Dr. John James is a recognized national and international thought leader in the use of contemporary extension. John specializes in using online engagement to enable change and innovation. Today, globally, people talk about innovation, and even European Union, nowhere it is a research, even research fund, they call innovation fund today. Innovation makes a lot of difference today. He has an extensive understanding of capacity building and agriculture extension, and having worked in variety of roles with the Department of Agriculture in Queensland for 35 years, 3.5 decades, he worked with the developmental department and works with a large number of farmers. He now operates as a consultant, helping organizations across Australia and beyond make better use of contemporary extension approaches. For his PhD, John investigated the factors that affect the adoption of Web 2.0 technologies, including webinars, YouTube videos. He is a past president of the Australasia Pacific Extension Network, APN, and in recognition of John's service to APN and the broader extension community, he was awarded the highest honor of APN and inducted as a life member. And I had the great opportunity to work with sometime talk about ICT CE extension during the pandemic time. We worked on small training booklet globally that will be circulated from other partners, and e-extension. I had the privilege of working with Dr. John James, and James, and on behalf of Manage, National Institute of Agriculture Extension Management, and this I welcome you for this conference on Manage International Conference on Agriculture Extension and Advisory Services, Innovation to Impact. Large number of our participants are from developmental departments, and they are also working as a subject matter specialist in the Krishi Vigyan Kendras farm science centers across the country. And also there are a large number of PhD research scholars and other students and other system partners like trainers, those who are working in extension, other stakeholders are there. And this session is recorded, and we are going to put for use of large number of stakeholders so that continuously they will get your insights. And I once again welcome to this conference, and please start. You can start your session. Dr. John James, please, you can take over.
It's good. Well, it's a pleasure to be with everyone here today. Greetings from Australia, where it's now the late afternoon. And now you see a map of Australia.
Australia to India, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah,
Great.
Carry on.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. Well, it's lovely to be here today. I've divided my presentation into 4 sections. So I'll be talking about setting the scene, then I'll talk about the benefits of e-extension, and then key success factors, and then I'll finish with some key challenges. So I imagine most people are watching using a computer today. So I encourage you also have a pen and pad just to jot down some notes and maybe some questions, because there will be time for questions at the end. Rest assured though that I'm happy to share a PDF of my presentation with you today, so you don't have to make exact notes of everything. And I imagine that many of you would have a smartphone or tablet nearby. So in fact, if you could get your smartphone, that'd be really helpful. So here is a QR code, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with what to do now. So for me, with my iPhone, I just go to my camera app as if to take a photo. And when I do that, a little pop-up appears at the top of my screen. And when I tap that, it takes me straight to today's poll. Otherwise, you can do a Google search for poll everywhere, so POLLEV, and you do that search, and it will be the first one that comes up. And if you tap on that, you'll then get the poll everywhere screen, and you merely need to type in the code for today's poll, which is MM-Forum. Otherwise, you can go to the URL and that'll be displayed on each of the slides. So that's a complicated introduction, but I'd now like you to indicate on the map, where are you located? So you can tap there, and in my case, I'll just tap on the globe at the bottom to indicate that I'm somewhere distant, and now I can get an idea of where people are joining us from across India. So that's great, thank you. So it's lovely when technology behaves itself like this, because I find using Poll Everywhere or similar programs a really good way of engaging with an audience, and then it doesn't matter how far apart that we're still able to connect easily. So I'll now move on and to set the scene. So as we all know, last year was a terrible year, mainly because of COVID-19 and the terrible impact that it had for most of us. And my heart goes out to any of you today who have lost loved ones or colleagues as a result of coronavirus. I'd now like you to indicate, well, what impact has it had on your extension activities? So if it's had almost no impact, then it'd be 1, very low. Otherwise, you can indicate what it was on a scale of 1 to 5 there. So this is good. You can see a number of people responding there now. And so, yes, so we can see it has had a terrible impact for many of us, but there was one bright side for me that came out of coronavirus, and that was the uptake of e-health or telehealth, where patients are able to visit their doctors remotely by using some technology. And even though the medical world has been trying to introduce this for over 10 years, it all happened very quickly. In fact, here's a headline from the New York Times saying that telemedicine arrives in the UK and they had 10 years of change in 1 week. And that was because people desperately needed to be able to communicate with their doctors. And so they were then willing to go through the process of learning how to do a web meeting or a Skype meeting, something like that. So when I read Atomic Habits last year by James Clear, he talks about new habits take about 2 months to take root in us so that we then get used to it. Well, coronavirus has been here for over a year, and it looks as though it's not going to change quickly. Some research by Bloomberg, which was only released earlier this month, shows that life really isn't going to return to normal for about another 7 years, because it's going to take countries around that world to be able to sufficiently vaccinate their populations. And if it's not coronavirus, then it's bound to be something else that's going to be challenging us. So just recently, the Nipah virus, which is 75 times more deadly than coronavirus, has been identified as perhaps the next big pandemic. And this was just 1 week ago that this news story came out. And yet another one, Russia has reported the first case of human infections with bird flu. And this is just from earlier this week. So my message is things are not going to get back to normal for a long time. So the sooner we can embrace e-extension, the better it's going to be. So if you thought that you could do without it and things would go back to normal, you need to think again. We're going to need to use e-extension. Now, when I talk about e-extension, I'm talking about the use of electronic technologies to enhance our traditional extension approaches, such as written material and physical meetings, so as to enable change. I advocate a blended approach. So just like Rickon was talking about, you still need the people and the technology. Well, so it is here. We need the traditional approaches as well as the digital ones. So I'm curious, how comfortable are you with using e-extension? So again, if you can indicate on the poll where on the scale you might be at the moment. And all these polls, by the way, are anonymous. I can't track them back to you afterwards. Okay, so this is really good to see that many people are comfortable with it. But I know from my experience that many aren't quite yet comfortable with it. So let me share with you my journey into e-extension. It came out of frustration. I was an extension officer 20 years ago. I was running workshops at different locations around Australia, and often they'd be on the same topic. And then afterwards, I'd want to share new information with all the attendees at the workshops. So we used teleconferences, but it was very clunky. I couldn't share any visual material with them easily, and it was very difficult to interact with people on the teleconference. It was like using 2 tin cans connected by string. So as a result of that, I looked into e-extension. And so it was back in 2007 that I was finally able to run my first online meeting using NetMeeting. I was able to have 34 participants from 4 different locations around Australia, and we talked all about blogs, wikis, podcasts, and of course, web meetings. The reason that eExtension is so important to us here in Australia is it's a big country. So here's a map of Australia that I've superimposed over India, and you'll see that Australia is about 3 times as large as India. So if you struggle connecting with your farmer clients, imagine how hard it is for us in Australia. So a little while ago, I was working with the beef industry, and I'm going to use a case study from that to share some highlights of eExtension with you. And the challenge for us is that for that project, I was dealing with the top half of Australia, so Queensland, the Northern Territory and Western Australia, and each of these red dots on the map indicate a beef property, and so you'll see they're scattered right across the country, and many of them are very far apart. While the roads in Australia are relatively good, it's very time consuming for us to drive or even fly between locations and then drive to the farmers. So that's the challenge. So I'll now move on and talk about some of the benefits of eExtension. So when I became the team leader for the eExtension of Future Beef, the first thing we did was to create a website so that it became a one-stop shop for beef producers, which they could access 24/7. And we promoted the use of an electronic newsletter. So we encouraged people to sign up to hear the latest information from us. The beauty of the website was that it gives us a lot of metrics. We know how many people are visiting it, whether they're new visitors or returning visitors, their age, their gender, lots of good rich data, as well as which of the pages on the website are the more popular ones. And that then guided us to create new information and short videos. So we did use YouTube videos. So it was lovely hearing Rickon talk about what he's been doing with Digital Green, because as I think we all appreciate, short videos are very powerful. In our case, we also promoted them through Facebook, and that helped extend the reach for us. And again, the metrics help us know how many people we reached, how many viewed the video, and then their reactions and their comments to that. So it worked very well for us. We also used webinars, and I introduced the Beef Connect webinars. And when I first did this, my colleagues said to me that I must be crazy because their farmers could barely turn on a computer, let alone join a webinar. Yet within just a few months, I had over 600 farmers join a single webinar, which showed to me that they are very capable, and sometimes we do underestimate them. I ran another series of webinars for my extension colleagues around Australia and beyond called Enabling Change Innovation, and we covered topics such as monitoring and evaluation, and we used SurveyMonkey to get feedback from those so we could see how easily people found the experience, their change of knowledge and confidence, and their overall satisfaction with the event. So interestingly, that episode on good monitoring and evaluation has had over 76,000 views. And to me, that's a fairly narrow topic. So it's really interesting to see the interest that's been taken around the world in that. And to me, that shows one of the benefits, that you create material once and then it can be used many times over and enjoyed by others. I talked about the electronic newsletter. We used MailChimp for that so that it looked good and it was easy for people to change their email addresses themselves. And again, it provided us with lots of metrics such as the top links that were being clicked in each of the e-bulletins so that we'd know what was useful for people, and we'd also know where they were located. So that's just a quick summary of Future Beef as a case study where we have successfully used eExtension. To me, the beauty of it is that we used multiple channels. So while we had Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and others, they all brought the users back to the website. So at the end of the short videos, we encourage people to visit the website to find the latest information. The key benefits were that we were able to easily connect with our geographically dispersed clients. And for us, it gave us a life balance, that if we were trying to drive or even to fly to visit the farmers that we engaged with, we would have no home life at all. So it gave us a good work-life balance. As part of my PhD studies, I surveyed my extension colleagues about how they were finding web conferencing. And as you'll see here, they indicated that it gave them much better engagement with their clients and colleagues. And it also helped them to be more innovative with their work and finally to be more responsive with their clients, because it meant that they're able to that they could engage with their farmers for that day or the next day. So that's all part of my PhD on Web 2.0 technologies, and there is a link down there if you care to download it afterwards. So let's now move on and talk about some of the key success factors. So to me, the number one thing is you need to be trying different things. So as new applications come out and as you hear your colleagues or your farmers using different things, well, give them a go, try them and see how they work for you. Otherwise, it's like the definition of insanity by Albert Einstein, saying that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and yet expecting different results. So I know that a lot of people struggle with web meetings, so I'll just give you a few tips. So if you haven't used them a lot, you need to practice. So in the same way that this young child learning to ride a bicycle needs to do it, every afternoon or, every second day at least, so it is with web meetings. If you only do it every second or third week, then you're not going to become very confident or competent in doing that. You also need the right equipment. So with notebook computers, they have a little microphone and webcam up the top, which is fine for joining a web meeting. But if you're running one, you really need to get an external headset so that your audience can hear you clearly, and also an external webcam. They're 10 times better than the ones that are just built into the lid of the notebook computer. Also consider lighting. So if you've got a room like this, that's great. But if you're more like the lady over here, get a little light and just place it on the top of your monitor, and so that you can light your face. So I'll now finish by talking about some of the key challenges. And when I've done that, I'm very happy to take questions from the audience. And so you can actually type them in the poll here, which will now stay open. And the beauty of this is that you can not only type in your questions, but you can upvote other people's questions. So then the most popular ones will float to the top. So talking of the limitations, so even here in Australia, we're limited by the infrastructure. We don't have enough mobile phone towers or satellites. So there's areas of our country that don't have sufficient coverage, which is not only frustrating for us, but also the farmers. But the good news is it's improving all the time. And so I believe that we should be starting to use e-extension now and not wait till everyone's connected. And similarly with access, more and more people are gaining access through smart devices or computers. And so I think that we need to be using it now and not waiting until everyone is finally on board. And there's also been a lot more competition, that there's a lot of other information providers out there who are spruiking their services and their information. And so this is where we need to build the trust of the farmers that we're working with, so that they source our information and understand that it's evidence-based. Of course, there's a few ethical concerns. So there's this documentary that came out on Netflix last year called The Social Dilemma, and it highlighted some of the problems with social networking and the negative impact it can have on our mental health. So if we're promoting the use of social media to our clients, we just need to be aware that there's some downsides to it as well. So there we go, folks. Today I've set the scene. I've talked about some benefits and key success factors and the key challenges. But the one take-home message I'd like you to have is that we need to keep trying different things. So I encourage you to be adventurous and try new e-tools as they come out, because there will always be something different. So I hope you've enjoyed today's presentation. To me, through using Poll Everywhere, the 10,000 kilometers between us today has shrunk, because to me it's enabled us to have very quick and instant communication and seeing how we can easily interact online like that. I do have a website called enablersofchange.com.au. I have a blog and I have podcasts and videos all about extension. So if you're interested in that, feel free to visit the website, and you can actually do that by just scanning the QR code up in the corner. But do subscribe to the newsletters. They're free. They come out every 2 weeks, and I share latest ideas around extension and innovation. So there we go. So I'll just now come to the questions. So the first one here is how to blend traditional and e-extension methods. So to me, it's when I run events face-to-face in a physical room together, I will use some of the e-extension technologies while we're there. So often I'll say, let's, instead of all traveling, 5 or 6 hours to get to this location today, let's meet up in a month's time, but we'll use a web meeting. And I'll show them how easy it is to join the web meeting while they're still with us in the physical room. So that way, in a month's time, they're much more likely to be able to join in. And during a physical meeting, I enjoy using things like Poll Everywhere or Slido so as to, it's much quicker and easier, and it captures the information for us. So the next one is how to choose the most appropriate digital media. To me, it comes back to what your users, your farmers are using. So if there's, say, 3 different options for you, talk with your farmers and see what it is that they're using to know what's going to be working best for them. So it's not what's convenient for us, it's what's convenient for them. The next question is about digital literacy among farmers. Yeah, so it's a bell curve. There's a number of people who are very good and very digital literate, but then at the other extreme, there are those who don't even have a computer, and so certainly don't know how to turn it on. But it's the younger generation. They're the ones who are coming through and powering us on, and so they're becoming far more engaged, and in fact, they're challenging us to be using e-extension more because they're just finding it so convenient. So overall, we do find that we do get good participation. So I'll just answer one more here. So yeah, developing digital skills. So we run workshops on a regular basis with our farmers. So if we're doing, say, we're talking about crop nutrition, then sometimes we'll build in some computer literacy to that, but often they're able to pick up the skills from their children or from other family members, so that we're actually running those workshops less now, that we're finding that there's sufficient uptake. So Saravanan, I think I'm getting towards the end of the time. So what I might do is I'll just finish. Zoom fatigue is a big problem for certainly us in Australia, and I suspect for many of us listening in today as well. So I've just got 3 tips. The first one is to turn off the self view, because as humans, we're just attracted to the little video of us and we're wanting to make sure that we look okay. Turn it off, because otherwise it's just too distracting. Secondly, don't be tempted to multitask. It doesn't work well for us. So focus just on the meeting itself and not try to be answering emails or reading other things. And then finally, take breaks. Usually I schedule meetings for 45 minutes, and then I have 15 minutes before the next meeting will begin. That allows me to take a quick walk or have a short break so that I'm slightly refreshed for the next meeting. So there we go, Saravanan. I'll just finish that now.
Thank you, John. And there is one last question from Disanayake from Sri Lanka. Do you have experience in conducting online training for farmers using online meeting apps like applications like Zoom, MS Team, or Facebook Live? And what is your experience? The question is from Sri Lanka. Yeah.
Sure. Yes, and I've found that it works very well. So I mainly use Zoom, but of course that can be put through Facebook Live. And I find that generally audiences engage very well. And I find that as a presenter, I enjoy engaging with people at a distance. And for the people out there, it helps them feel more engaged. And using Zoom, I use the breakout rooms so that they can then chat amongst themselves as they would at a face-to-face event. So I find that it works very well.
Thank you, John. And still, digital e-extension is a very vast, and still our participants may be having a lot more questions, but we will catch up. Maybe more questions means we'll put in email and we will get back to you. And
Certainly.
thank you very much for joining today from Australia. And
Good.
have a great weekend. And bye-bye.
Thank
you
you.
very much.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.